Are you worried about peeing your pants on the rebounder, especially postpartum? Well, this is for you. I've had two babies, both very large babies. I had one that was 8'7", one that was over 9.5 pounds, and that puts a lot of pressure on that pelvic floor. I did some pelvic floor exercises when I was pregnant. I went to pelvic floor physio postpartum after both kids, and I was very surprised, not pleasantly, how weak my pelvic floor was postpartum. So this series is going to be great for you to build up that pelvic strength, build up that core strength, to get more confident on the rebounder so we're not worrying about peeing our pants while we bounce. Now, it's very, very common to have a weak pelvic floor postpartum or even way later in life, whether we've had kids or not. But here's the good news. The pelvic floor is a muscle. It can be strengthened, it can be trained, and we don't have to always worry about peeing our pants for the rest of our life. Now, it is gonna take time, like training any muscle. It is not gonna change overnight. So we are gonna do a lot of exercises on and off the rebounder to really reconnect that pelvic floor, the entire core, our breath work, so we're feeling more comfortable when we get bouncing on the rebounder. So to start today, we're just gonna start standing on your rebounder. Take as much time as you need, repeating this as often as you need to feel comfortable with that pelvic floor strength before we move on to the next class. But going back to the foundation, to the fundamentals, and we're just gonna find our breath. So when we're breathing, we want to find that pelvic floor engagement, we want to find that transverse engagement, and we also want to use that diaphragmatic breath. So we want to use our diaphragm to breathe, so we're not bearing down or putting pressure on that pelvic floor as we're doing our exercises and as we're bouncing. So to start, comfortable stance. You can do this on the floor the entire time today, or stand your rebounder, because eventually this series will be all about rebounding. But you're just gonna take your hands, you're gonna take it to your rib cage. You're kind of right to the outside of your rib cage. Now, as we inhale, you wanna feel that rib cage expand. You wanna inhale, rib cage goes out, and as you exhale, the rib cage comes back together. So as you expand your rib cage is pressing into your hands like this, and as you exhale, the rib cage is coming back in. So again, exhale, think of pressing your rib cage, just gently expanding outwards into the hands. Inhale. Now, as we find that exhale, we're also going to start to draw in that pelvic floor connection. So the more control we have consciously of our pelvic floor when we're breathing and doing our exercises, the better control we're going to have when we're rebounding. Rebounding is great for pelvic floor because it is going to work the pelvic floor with every bounce, no matter what. But it takes time to get that strength. So if we can consciously engage and lift that pelvic floor, it is going to give us better connection while we're bouncing, for kind of a quicker pelvic floor strengthening without peeing our pants as much. So again, with that diaphragmatic breath, you want to inhale, expand the ribs, exhale, close the ribs. At the same time, you want to think of those pelvic, your pelvis, your pelvic bones, your hip bones, and your pubic bone down here. Think of it kind of like a triangle. You kind of take your fingers, find that point. As you exhale, again, that triangle's kind of nice and large. As you inhale, that triangle's large. As you exhale, you're drawing that triangle together. So you're drawing your hip bones together. You're drawing that pelvic bone up. At the same time, also think of kind of your sit bone as well. Kind of that same triangle on the back. Hip bones, tailbone, a nice triangle. As we exhale, we're drawing that triangle closer together. So we're lifting through the pelvic floor, and we're drawing those abdominals in, so we're wrapping the core is the cue we can use. You're wrapping those abdominals together. Again, if your fingers are like this against your core, you can physically do this. You're wrapping that core, you're knitting those abdominals together, and you're lifting through that pelvic floor. So imagine that pelvic floor is like a swing, a hammock from the front to the back. Nice hammocks under there. As you exhale, you're gonna lift that hammock up. We're gonna do lots of different cues, lots of different ways, lots of analogies, but we're gonna start with this one. Let's get in that breath. Inhale, expand. Exhale, close the ribs. Exhale, close that triangle. Exhale, lifting through that pelvic floor. So we're knitting those abdominals together. We're wrapping that core in the exhale. So inhale, expanding, and the inhale, we want that pelvic floor to release, to relax. As we exhale, we're lifting through the pelvic floor, closing the abdominals, drawing deep transverse abdominal work, and closing the rib cage. It's all connected. Our breath, our pelvic floor, our transverse abdominals, all connected. So we're starting here. Inhale, expand the ribs. Let the pelvic floor release. Exhale, draw those triangle bones, those seat bones, those pelvic bones lift. We're knitting those abdominals together. We're lifting on the exhale. Inhale, let go. 2 more times. Inhale, expand. Relax the pelvic floor. Exhale, think of engaging that pelvic floor, lifting that hammock like an elevator is another cue. From the basement level, you're going to lift that elevator up to level 2 or level 3. On the exhale, we're going to inhale, let go. Again, find that breath. You can start with just the rib cage. It's easy sometimes to forget everything that's going on, so just starting with one. Start with that rib cage. Inhale, expand. Exhale, rib cage narrows. Once you have that, adding that pelvic floor. Inhale, pelvic floor releases. Exhale, that hammock or that elevator lifts. Kind of like that Kegel. We're adding more to it than just a Kegel when we do our core exercises. But think of the Kegel. Inhale, let go. Exhale, you're lifting that pubic bone. We're lifting that tailbone. We're lifting that elevator up. At the same time, we're also going to wrap that core. So inhale, expand, and let go. Exhale, lift the pelvic floor. Draw those abdominals, wrapping that core so we find that deep transverse connection. Pelvic floor work. On that exhale with that breath, with that rib cage. One more time, try and put it all together. Inhale, expand. Exhale, close the rib. Hip bones draw in with that triangle, lifting that pelvic floor. Exhale. Good. Now, we are going to get off the rebounder today, do some floor work, keeping a lot of that connection going today, and then we will get a little bit on that rebounder as well. Once we learn that connection on the floor, we're going to bring that to our rebounder. So we're grabbing a mat, and you're going to need a ball as well. We're going to use that. We're going to start with just ourselves on our mat, keeping that ball handy. So that same breath we did, we're going to be continuing to do on the mat. The more conscious work we have, strengthening the pelvic floor off the rebounder, the better it will be on the rebounder when we're unconsciously strengthening it with that bounce. So line on your backs to start. We're just going to bend those feet up on that floor. So even here, taking a couple breaths. Inhale, ribcage expands. Exhale, ribcage closes. Exhale, close that triangle. Lift the pelvic floor. Find that deeper transverse connection. Again, inhale, expand. Exhale, close the ribs, lift the pelvic floor, wrap the core, lift that elevator. Again, another cue you can use. So even here, we're not physically moving our body. You're not seeing me move my arms or my legs, but we're still finding that pelvic floor. We're still finding that deep core connection with our breaths. You don't actually have to move, we will, to find that work and find that connection. Another cue you can use instead of that elevator lifting from the basement level up to maybe that level 2 or 3 is if you think of drinking a smoothie, something really thick or a milkshake. Now we're not going to be drinking it with our mouth. You're going to be drinking it with your vagina and your butt. So maybe a funny analogy to use, but as you exhale, think of lifting that really thick liquid through the straw, through your pelvic floor, through your vagina. So you're sucking it up really slow, trying to lift through the straw. And as you exhale again, you're just letting it go. So you're not sucking up that smoothie anymore, that milkshake. Again, as you exhale, think of sucking up that smoothie, that milkshake with that pelvic floor, finding that wrapping the core. And then inhale, let go. Lots of different cues you can use. Some may connect to you and your body more than others. That's why we're going to say a lot of different ones. But now we're going to add some movement with that breath. So on your backs, we're just going to add some heel slides. So we're just going to inhale, that right leg is going to come out. As you exhale, think of wrapping the core, lifting the pelvic floor, slide that heel back in. Same leg. Inhale, extend, relaxing, exhale. Think of drawing that triangle closer together. Think of lifting through that elevator, pelvic floor, lifting through the smoothie or milkshake. Inhale, press that leg out. Exhale, think of really dragging that heel on the mat. So you're getting resistance as you draw it in. You can always kind of come onto a mat or just the floor. Inhale, press it out. Exhale, draw it in. Now we usually use a lot of music in our classes to move to that beat. Today, we're just focusing on that breath. So we're not going to use that music as a distraction or a way to kind of move too quickly through the exercise. We're just going to use our breath and our body awareness. So if you want to throw some music on yourself, anything in the background, you absolutely can, because today, Just moving how it feels good for you, your pace with your breath. So really find that inhale, exhale again. So find the inhale, leg extends out. Exhale, wrap that core. Draw those abdominals in. Lifting through the elevator. Good, one more time. Inhale, press out. Exhale, draw it in, wrap that core, lifting to the pelvic floor. Now taking that right knee, same leg, we're gonna take that knee up into the air. We're gonna take your left hand and press in. So exhale, press that hand into the thigh. Inhale, bring it back down. So exhale, we're bringing that knee up, wrapping the core, pressing your hand physically into that thigh. As you press your hand into the thigh, you're gonna feel that entire abdominal chain react. You're gonna find that work becomes a little bit harder, adds a little more pressure, a little more resistance. So we inhale, leg and arm can come out. Exhale, think of wrapping that core, lifting the pelvic floor before we find the movement. Exhale, keep the exhale, keep that engagement as you're pressing into that hand. Inhale, let go. Find the exhale, wrap the core first before we move, keeping that exhale, keeping that connection. Press that hand into the thigh. You can press as hard or as little into that thigh as you want, depending how much work you want to get. You're finding this a little bit easy, press harder into that thigh to get more of that core connection, more of that transverse engagement. Find the exhale, lift to the pelvic floor, press. So we're doing a lot of conscious core engagement, a lot of conscious lifting to the pelvic floor, connecting, again, before we get on that rebounder. Strengthening it here before we get on there. A few more. Exhale, press, inhale, release. One more time. Exhale, press. Inhale, release. Bringing that foot down. This time, the opposite left heel slides out. So we inhale, press away. Exhale, drag that heel, close the rib cage. Good. Now we inhale, press. Exhale, drag. Now in this position, we're not tucking through the pelvis. We're not scooping out that low back and scooping out those abs. Just nice and neutral. So inhale, let go. Exhale, drag that heel, find that resistance on the floor to deepen that core work. Inhale, press away. Exhale, draw that heel in. Again, we're working through those deeper transverse as well. Inhale. Exhale. So if you're postpartum, there's a very good chance you might also have some abdominal separation, that rectus abdominis splits. So we're also working that deep transverse abdominals, that deeper core layer, to strengthen that as well, to also help with that abdominal separation and help that strength connect. Inhale. Exhale, draw it in. Good. We inhale, press away. Again, expand, relax, release. Exhale, lift, engage. Good, take that right hand overhead. Exhale, bring that left knee, right hand together. Exhale, press. Inhale, let go. So it kinds of seems really simple exercise we're starting with. And they are simple. They're not hard exercises. You can make them hard using your breath, using that connection to your core. But they're really functional and they're really good to do. So maybe it's not like we're jumping back up into 100 sit-ups, planks, jacks, all that. We're starting with the basics, the fundamentals, to build back up to that. Inhale. Doesn't mean they're easy though. If you're finding that core connection, you're finding that resistance, you're using that breath to your benefit. So you can exhale, that triangle comes in, the hip bones close together, the pelvic floor lifts, or wrapping that core. Inhale, let go. Exhale, add that pressure into the thigh. So one of the things you want to do when we're doing this is one of the cues that you sometimes hear is kind of to connect to that deeper transverse abdominals is like brace, like you're about to be punched in the tummy, which isn't always necessarily the best cue depending on how you interpret it. Because when we brace against like a punch, we tend to actually kind of bear down, which is actually going to add more pressure downwards into that pelvic floor, which isn't something we want to do. If we want to strengthen the pelvic floor, we don't want to be adding extra pressure pressing down into it. So I don't always use the brace like you're about to be punched cue, because for some people that is just pressing down. You're like going, ooh, and then all that pressure is coming down through the pelvic floor, which can lead to that leakage. So exhale, think of lifting the pelvic floor. Inhale, let go. Again, using the breath. If that moves a little faster or a little slower, you're doing what's best for you. Good. Let's do it 2 more times. Exhale, press. Think of wrapping that core. Lift the pelvic floor before we start that movement. Good. Last one. Release here. We're gonna take that ball, still stay on your backs, taking that ball between the knees. The ball is a great way to add feedback to that pelvic floor as you engage that inner thigh. So just staying here 2 times to first. Let's find the exhale, squeeze that ball. Exhale, wrap that core, lift the pelvic floor, squeeze inner thighs, pelvic floor, and release. One more time like this, just exhale, wrap that core, lift the pelvic floor, drink that smoothie. As we're gonna be doing this, we're gonna lift the hips into a glute bridge. So we exhale, lift the hips, squeeze that ball, squeezing the core, lifting through the pelvic floor. Inhale, release. Exhale, lift, squeeze. Inhale, release, come down. Again, just moving your own breath, your own beat, ignoring that music today. I know it goes against all our other classes that we move to. Breathe, but no distraction today with that music being too fast or too slow. Just your breath, your movement. Exhale, so consciously thinking of that breath. Inhale, release. Squeezing that ball. So squeeze that ball. You can also use a pillow or rolled up towel if you don't have one of these little squishy balls. Exhale, lift. We're not lifting very high. We're not lifting that full rib cage off the mat coming onto our shoulders. Just a little bit. Exhale, press the heels into the mat, lift those inner thighs, lift the inner thighs, lift those hips as you squeeze your inner thighs, lifting to the pelvic floor. Again, that ball squeeze here grabs a great way to connect to that inner thigh and connect to that pelvic floor. It adds great feedback between both of them. Exhale, lift, squeeze. Inhale, release. One last time. Exhale, lift, squeeze. Hold it up in that bridge. Just exhale, squeeze that ball from this position. So exhale, squeeze the ball. Inhale, let go. Exhale, squeeze that ball, drawing that core in. Exhale, let go. Exhale, squeeze. Now again, if being in that bridge position isn't feeling good, or you're feeling like you're not keeping connection to that pelvic floor properly, always bring those hips down. Exhale, squeeze. Inhale, let go. Exhale, squeeze, wrap that core, lifting that elevator, sucking up that smoothie. Inhale, let go. Exhale, squeeze. Now hold the squeeze this time. Hold that connection to that pelvic floor lift. Hold that connection to the abdominal wrapping, but continue to breathe. So now we're just holding that squeeze. We're holding the pelvic floor. We're still able to breathe using our breath. We're on the inhale and exhale. We're not letting fully go. We're keeping that connection. So it's still engaged the pelvic floor. It's still engaged the transverse. But we're still able to breathe through the rib cage and release. We're gonna come over. One more exercise we're gonna do on the floor, and then we're gonna find that rebounder a little more. So we're gonna do some tabletop work. Keeping that ball if you wanna use it. We're gonna take that ball into that right hand, nice and stable through our 3 points of contact. We're gonna take that ball, we're gonna press it onto that left thigh. So again, as we exhale, so opposite hand, opposite leg. Press that ball on the exhale, inhale. As we exhale, we're drawing that hand and leg together. Exhale, press hand to ball. Inhale, open. Exhale, press. Now as we're doing this kind of bird dog, we're not letting that back sway. We're not lifting that leg and arm too high as we arch and really round through it. We're keeping that spine nice and neutral, nice and long. So draw those abdominals in, press that low back to the sky. Exhale, press. We inhale. Exhale, press. This is again very effective. Maybe simple exercise, but oh so good. Exhale. Whether you're newly postpartum or it's been years or not postpartum at all, this is still a great exercise I do all the time in a lot of my classes. Really draws that connection. Exhale, press a hand to the ball. Again, the more hand you press that ball into the thigh, the more resistance you're gonna get, the more feedback you're gonna get. Makes it harder to stabilize, harder to work. Inhale, exhale. Let's do 2 more. Inhale, exhale. 1 more. Inhale, reach. Exhale, press. Releasing here. Switching, so that hand now comes, ball into that left hand, right thigh. Exhale, press the ball into the thigh. Inhale, open. Again, check out that low back. It's not arching. It's not swaying. We're not lifting so high and arching. Maybe looks really big and cool. We're losing that core connection. We're losing that low back support. Exhale, press hand and thigh. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, press. Again, that conscious core engagement is going to help lead to better core engagement on that rebounder. Inhale. exhale. Again, 2 more times. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Good. Releasing here. Keep that ball handy. We're going to get back that rebounder work. So we're just going to set that rebounder back up. If you have a stability bar and you want to use that, we're going to do just a little bit of step ups to start. If you have a wall, you can put it beside a wall. If you have a chair, you can use that as well. I'll show you a bit of both. So if you're having a chair, you're going to kind of put it quite in front of you. So just going to take your left leg onto the rebounder. We're doing both. Stepping on that rebounder, making sure we're not on the bungees or your springs. You're going to take that right leg, you're going to tap it down to the floor. Just the toe touches, and then you're going to lift. So a little hinge from the hips. Find that exhale, lift. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. So you're just kind of tapping the toe. Just the toe comes down, barely touches, and then lifts. So we're finding again that stability work through the thigh, through the glute. If you want to not hang on to anything and just find balance work, also really good. Going really slow. Inhale, tap the toe. Exhale, lift. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. So again, you find a little hinge for it here. Backs are staying nice and supported, nice and long. Lifting all the way up. Find that glute starting to work. Just a little bit, hopefully. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. Just getting that glute to connect. So connected through our body. Our glutes, our entire core system to that pelvic floor. So we're going to work it all. Exhale, lift. Let's do a few more. Lift. 2 more. Last one. We're going to switch legs. Left leg taps down. Tap down. Exhale, lift. So as we inhale, we're hinging forward. Exhale, lifting up. Find that breath. Inhale. Even here, think of exhale. Think of consciously lifting to the pelvic floor, wrapping that core, drawing those triangles, those hip bones, that pelvic bone together, the hip bones in the back, tailbone, triangle the back, triangle the front. Inhale, exhale, lift. Inhale down, exhale, lift. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale, keeping that spine long. Really working the stability through that supporting leg. Inhale, lower. Exhale, lift. A few more. Using the breath. 2 more. Inhale. Exhale. 1 more. Good. Releasing here. We're going to grab our ball and we're coming back onto that rebounder. So we've got that ball, we've got our rebounder. We're going to take that ball between our knees or just above the knees and inner thighs. Depending on how inflated your ball is depending on how far your feet are apart. We kind of want them hip distance or kind of getting a little tension on that ball. So we're just going to start on that rebounder with your health bounce. So we're not leaving the rebounder at all. The feet are staying fully connected. It's not a big bounce. It's just a little press down with your body weight and letting those bungees or the springs do the work. We're not worrying about that beat. That ball is there to provide some feedback to that pelvic floor. So when we add that little inner thigh with the ball, it allows us to consciously think of that pelvic floor a little bit more. So again, think of that inhale, expand. Exhale, lift the pelvic floor. Lift, draw the seat bones together. Draw the hip bones together. Lift to the elevator. Drop the core. Inhale, let go. Exhale, add that conscious engagement. Constant lift. Inhale, let go. So just adding that little movement now, that little health bounce. Shoulders over hips, weight is in the heels, and the ball of the foot. So we're not all the way forward to the toes, and we're not all the way back in heels. Exhale, squeeze the ball, lift to the pelvic floor. Inhale, gently let go. The exhale, lift. Inhale, let go. So as we're bouncing, as we're starting to that bounce to find that connection to the pelvic floor, if we're consciously thinking of that lift and kind of holding that engagement, it's going to give us that body a little more feedback as we're bouncing to strengthen that pelvic floor even more than it's going to be involuntarily contracting every single bounce. The more kind of conscious effect we give it, the more support we're going to have while it's strengthening all on its own on that bounce. So inhale again, let go, ribcage expands, exhale, lift. Inhale, let go. Exhale, lift. Okay, we're gonna take that ball out. We're gonna do the exact same thing. So keeping your feet a little closer together, hip distance or even narrow might feel a little better on the pelvic floor instead of the feet really wide to start. So we're keeping that small and help out, soft bend the knees. Weight back in the heels and the ball of foot, those kind of 3 points of contact, the ball of the foot and the heel. This was my foot. Draw those abdominals in. Now find an inhale. Exhale, wrap that core, lift the pelvic floor, and this time kind of hold that engagement. So you're holding that engagement for a little bit as we bounce. We're still breathing. We're not holding the breath. We're still can find that diaphragmatic breath. But we're holding that little pelvic floor lift, and we're holding that wrap the core. Still breath work. Good, pressing down to that rebounder. Anytime you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm losing that endurance, that hold is starting to kind of quiver, inhale, let go. And then exhale, find that core connection again. It takes time to build that endurance to be able to hold that pelvic floor lifted and hold that core wrapped. It's not going to be instantaneous. We're going to be able to hold that through the entire exercise the entire time. Got to build that endurance back up. Good. Now, if this little health bounce feels good and you're not feeling like you're about to pee your pants here, you can stay here, or we're gonna add just a little bit of movement. Not bouncing, but we're gonna step alternating heels forward. So we're gonna step it right and left. So we're just taking alternating feet and stepping them forward in the rebounder. So we're not actually bouncing yet. We're adding a little bit up and down, but the feet aren't leaving at all. So we're still getting that movement up and down. I'm gonna call it a bounce, but we're not leaving the rebounder, so you're still getting that involuntary contraction. The pelvic floor, we're still working it, just adding some movements. You got it. Take it forward. So as that foot comes forward, weight in the heels. Because we're lifting those toes. These are our heels together. You got it. Take it forward. Taking that little bit of movement, little bounce, but staying fully connected, close chained to that rebounder. Take it forward. Yes. Whoo. Last two, little march right here. March forward, and back. March forward, and back. So you can kind of pump the arms. So again, feet, maybe hip distance wider, maybe wider. But as we're strengthening the pelvic floor, it might not feel good to get those feet too wide. Kind of more wider, a little more pull in that pelvic floor. Always option to keep it more narrow, making maybe that march only like an inch or two forward, inch or two wide of those feet. Take it forward. So adding just a little pressure into the mat. So we're getting that little movement up and down. Take it forward, back. Back to those heels together, right here, right together, left. So today's bounce isn't gonna be a big bounce. Nothing we do is a really big bounce, but we're not leaving the rebounder. Feet are staying connected the entire time. You can keep feet connected all the time to still get a really good rebounder workout. Back to the march, forward, back. Take it right, then back. Forward, back. Yes. New movement, step out, right, then left. Step it right, left, right, left. So this is kind of our prep work for our jacks. So maybe those feet are stepping wider, maybe they're stepping out a little bit. Depends also the size of your rebounder. Maybe the arms come out to that half jack arm. Take it out, so they're coming shoulder height. Feet are staying connected, but a little pressure into the rebounder. Take the arms all the way overhead. Take it up, up. Yes. Get the heart up a little bit, a little up and down, moving on that rebounder. Take it side. So these are stepping jacks. Back to those heels together. Right together, left, right together, left. we go. Arms can just swing. So let's march it. Front, back, right here. Take it forward and back. Forward and back. Still staying connected. Add a little pressure into the rebounder. Nice flat feet. Stepping jacks, arms overhead. Right, left. We got it. More. Not a lot of bounce today. More consciously work on that floor movements. Health bounce. Again, just connecting here. Pressing through those feet. Balls of the foot, heels, soft bend the knees. Even here, draw those abdominals in. Roll the shoulders back. Feet are staying connected. They're not lifting yet. We're gonna build up to that. Take as much time, repeat as much as you need to build up. We're gonna be doing a little more bouncing next time, but still just as much core emphasis. Put on the rebounder.